Okay, hello everyone and welcome back. Today I am doing the video before class because I was very ahead of schedule today. So we'll see if this ends. So I'm going to be sort of figuring it out as I go along. But basically today we're going to be talking about synthesis. Yeah, right? So far we've been doing a lot of stuff with sampling, but today we're going to actually be using like these sort of software versions of electronic instruments to make our own sounds. So you're going to want to go to Instruments and you're going to want to drag in Wavetable. And you can drag that onto a MIDI track or you can drag it below here. And again, let's go and like select 4 bars maybe. And as we did, so all these instruments are triggered by MIDI as well. So we're going to select, say, 4 bars, right click, insert empty MIDI clip, and then you can double click on that to pull this up, and there you go, right? Now again, if we double click on the clip, it will show us what's in the clip, but if we double click on the track, it will show us this synthesizer, right? And if you click this up arrow down here, you can get sort of an expanded view. Either way is fine, but this will just, I think, make things a little bit easier for you to understand. So the first thing is, how do we get some sound out of this, right? So finally, the thing I'm going to show you is kind of how to play in your own sounds, right? So what you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure this button over here, that little record button, is on. And then I'm going to be playing some things in with a little controller I have over here, but don't fret, you do not need one of those. What you guys can do is go up to the top right here, click this keyboard button, and now if you hit A, right, if you hit your keys, right, they are going to be aligned with the keyboard, right? And if you look at piano keys, computer keyboard, you'll see the way they actually, the logic for this is another piece of software, but you can see, right, this will maybe give you a little bit of a better view of things, right? So A, W, S, right? So you can see how those keys are correlated to the white keys, right? So that middle line of keys is going to be your white keys, and then the black keys on a piano are going to be some of the ones in the top. And then you can forget about the rest of this because, as I said, it's a different software. But the one thing it does share is that Z and X is going to help you control the octave. So what does that mean, right? The octave is when we go up by 12 notes, right? And in the Western musical scale, when we go up by 12 notes, we're going to get the same pitch, but just an octave higher. So for example, right? So I'm hitting the same key, but I'm using Z and X to shift the octave. So if you want to play in your own melody, right, what you can do is click where you want to start, and then you hit this, click this record button, and again, make sure that is red, click this record button, and it will just start recording. Now that might be a little difficult to immediately start playing, so there are a couple things you can do to make it a bit easier yourself. And by the way, all of this applies to the drum rack as well, so you could also play in the sequence on your keyboard. I'll probably talk more about that in class. But what you can do is you can go up to the metronome and you can turn the count in to 1 bar, maybe turn the metronome on as well since we have nothing else keeping time. Okay, so if we hit record now, right? So there we go. We get not only the metronome, but it also gave us that 1 bar count in, right? So tick, 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 right? And now you can see the notes I played are here, and I can go and I can adjust them as we did before, but we can also play them. So I'm going to select that, hit loop, Command L to play. I'm just, oh, I don't know how that happened. Great, okay. Right, and maybe I'm like, okay, I don't really like these. And maybe I'm like, we can get this a little bit closer back there. Maybe over here, actually. So yeah, I don't play the piano. This is not particularly interesting sounding, but yeah, that's how you play stuff in. Yeah, so if you want to try and play it in yourself, you can, and then you can always, as I said, you can always edit it. Another nice thing to be aware is that if you click this headphone button over here, then when you select notes, you'll hear them, and when you move them, you'll also hear what they're going to. So I find that quite useful. So yeah, that's how you play stuff in. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but why don't we just why don't we start by actually looking at what sound we can create. Yeah, so right now you can see, so basically what's going on here. The first thing you're going to want to pay attention to is just what's here, right? What I'm just outlining here. So this is oscillator 1, right? So this is our first sound source, right? And right now you can see from the yellow, it's a sine wave. Right? Let me just make something that doesn't sound like absolutely terrible. Okay, great. So basically, what you want to pay attention to is this wave, right? So this is our sine wave, right? Which is the sine wave from math class, right? From trig, right? And over here, you can see this allows you to change the shape. So with this, so what a wave, so most synths, right? They're just going to have like a sine wave or a square wave or something, right? And you might select between them. But wavetable, right? This is called wavetable. Wavetable is also a style of synthesis. And with that, you have these tables, right, that have multiple waves, and you have some way of selecting between them. Now, there are lots of different synthesizers. Some are more old school. The reason we're using this one is not because wavetable synthesis is of particular interest to us, but just because I really like the interface on this, and I think it's like the most easy to understand. Because some of the other synths are also really useful, but they maybe echo like the actual shape of like the physical keyboards, which is useful if you're familiar with hardware synths, but if you're not, it can sometimes be more confusing. So let's see what happens when we change this. Right, so you can see we're getting kind of these different tones. And yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff you can play around here, right? So these basically are going to have these other wave tables, right? So maybe we'll go to distortion, and we'll go to, oh, maybe that's Juno 60 actually, but JN60 bitter. I wonder how this would sound if it was a bit lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to hit Command A to select all of my notes, and then I'm going to hit Shift down arrow, and that will move everything down by an octave. Okay, cool. I kind of like that, right? So when it comes to synths, right, you have your oscillator, right? Then another thing you'll often have is your envelope, right? So now I want you to look here where it says amp. So envelope 2 and envelope 3 are things you can assign to different other parameters to control them. But amp is going to be like your main envelope that's controlling like the volume of the sound, right? So you'll notice that every time I play, basically what this is saying is every time I play a note, it's going to really quickly spike the volume, right? In fact, so quickly that it just sounds like the note turns on, and then it's going to bring it down a little, and it's going to fade, and then it's going to go from there, right? So if I hit a note on my keyboard, now listen to this. If I change, so this first part is called the attack. So if I begin to move that, right? So you can see down here, A, now it's going to take 11.6 seconds for it to get to its loudest point. This is basically a graph of volume, and you can imagine that's someone like twisting the volume knob, right? So you see here it goes up and then down a little, right? So if you want something, so if you want kind of more ambient sound, right, you can have that slow attack. If you want a more plucky thing, right, right? So there's a lot of different, options you have there. And then the next thing you basically want to be aware of is the filter, which is over here, right? So the filter we already kind of talked about. This is the same as that auto filter thing we were using, and it's just going to remove different frequencies. So you can see up here is the filter shape. And yeah, that's more or less it. So right? So there we go, right? So all of this stuff together, right? I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Now, where stuff gets more complicated is basically you have all these different parameters, right? So we have like this thing, right? Or we have like this has to do with basically different ways that you can kind of affect the wave, right? So, right? So basically there are all these different parameters, right? And as you saw, I was getting some interesting noises when I was moving them, right? When I was changing them. And so basically what envelope 2, 3, LFO1, LFO2 do is they basically are like little helpers, right? They basically allow you to control the parameters, right? Imagine that. So imagine this is like a certain knob, right? They basically allow you to control this, right? So with an envelope, it's just going to happen once, right? It's going to go up, down, there. With an LFO, it's going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, right? So, for example, if I click on this, you'll see it appears here, right? Highlights for me, oscillator 1 position, right? Then I'm going to go to LFO 1, right? Right? And now you can see every time it plays a note, it's going to start moving that, right? So I will make, and that will be even easier to see if I just make like one long note, right? So I'm just going to make one long note, and I'm going to pull this, right? So you see how it's moving up and down? Exactly, right? Now, I'm going to get rid of that by clicking and deleting. With the envelopes, right, those just do it, but they're just going to do it once. So if I go to oscillator 1 position with this envelope, right, do you see how it kind of goes up and then down and then it's going to kind of stay there, right? Right. So there you go, right? Now, I know this is a lot. I know this is very complicated. So what I would suggest that so if you're really interested, if this really captures you, and you really want to just mess around and play around, like go for it. There's a ton of cool stuff you can do, right? So we can, maybe go and we'll make this just a sine wave and, right? And then you can turn on oscillator 2 here, and that allows you to have another oscillator, right? And you can just start kind of messing around with all this, right? And the same with the filter. You can also have the filter controlled by the envelope, right? So I'm going to do that, right? And now you can see. And we can assign the LFO to, say, this. So it almost got this like violin type sound. Maybe we'll turn this down. Right, so if you really feel compelled, start getting in there, again, mess around with all this different stuff, and don't really worry about too much like what stuff is, but just play around with it. right? And kind of mess around. You can even go down here, turn on some unison. And then remember, of course, that you also have chords and things. Let's maybe get a little more decay. Okay, yeah, so that wasn't great. As I said, I don't play piano, but I was able to get something that sounded slightly coherent. How is that? Well, first, let me just talk one more thing, the thing I was just about to say, which you should try out, which is go to Wavetable, hit this arrow, and you can see there are all of these presets. Now, don't be afraid of using presets. Don't even be afraid of not really changing them. If you just want to mess around, if you feel compelled by the synth and you feel compelled by like wanting to get in there and explore and make crazy sounds, great. But if you're someone who's just like, you know what, I just want to like play melodies, right? Just give me something that sounds half decent, right? Right? So find something that you like, right? So we were doing some chordy stuff. Right? There's so many different sounds. Oh yeah, I love some of these. I mean, yeah, I love a good Reese bass. Let's get that in there. Right? Okay, now you may notice that these ones that have like a little T, right? Those ones, they've kind of set up these different controls that are mapped to different parameters, right? So they're kind of like suggestions on things you might want to like control. And then they have these different presets here. Right? Now, again, those can be really useful if you just want to like get going. But if you want to see, you know, there are some of these other ones where, again, if you're interested but feel intimidated, you can open up some of these ones without the kind of T thing. Right? Maybe we'll do this Jupiter stuff. Right? And the cool thing about this is now you can see how is this patch constructed, right? So you can see here, okay, they're going to this vintage Jupiter double pulse. They're turning the volume down a little. They have this like sub oscillator, right? So we turn that off. Right? You can see the sub, basically what it does is put a sine wave that's like 1 or 2 octaves below just to create that kind of bassy sound. Right? And then this is this, so the first oscillator is, second is, right? Right? And you see you've got all these interesting LFOs that are controlling things. They have so much stuff here. Oh my God, this is crazy. Well, the green stuff is more related to other things, but you can see they're controlling so many things, right? So we not only have the oscillator 1 position is being changed, right? We have the filter is being changed. We have the second filter is being changed. With the LFO amount is being changed, right? So you can begin to look and dissect kind of how some of these sounds sound to be, basically. So, right, let's say you're there and you're like, okay, cool, I'm not that interested in stuff. I want to make more things, right? But I don't know how to play instruments, right? So obviously one way to start is just, you know, messing around and seeing what sounds good. Oh, But one thing that can help out if you're feeling intimidated is there's this scale button here. Now, what a scale is it's basically like a series of notes that kind of work together well, right? And so when you turn the scale on, it's going to show you all of the notes in that scale. Now, all of the notes in the scale are all the notes in a certain key. All songs are in a key, so don't think this is like a shortcut, right? All songs have, well, sort of, especially all like pop songs, right? They all are in a certain key, right? And what that can make things really useful, because you see if I just put in some notes here, right? It sounds okay, maybe a little off. And if it sounds a little bit off to you, maybe because all those notes are not part of the same key, right? So we can turn scale on and just, again, you can pick whichever one you want. I would say for this button, pick whichever you want. For this, I would maybe stick to major or minor. Again, unless you are interested in exploring other scales, right? So a bunch of these are Western, and then some of these are like non-Western scales as well, right? So like Rav, I believe, is like an Indian scale. So that can be interesting to explore as well. But let's say we're doing F minor, right? So now I'm just going to make sure that all the notes I click are blue. Right? Right? So I was just kind of clicking at random, but that sounds much more coherent because everything is together, right? Now, a couple other things to be aware of. If you select all of this, or if you hit Command A, again, we have the ×2 +2. Right? And then also if you hit legato, it will like make everything as long. Right? As kind of long as possible. Right? Now, right, so there we go. That's sounding kind of cool. And yeah, there's a lot of other stuff you can play around here. You can randomize all the... So again, these notes also have velocity, right? Now some of these, I think, and also some of the synths are set up so that the velocity will like change certain parameters. So we can get a really different feel. And then again, if you want to like mess around with things, you can also hit invert, turn everything upside down, and then just make sure everything's in the blue. Right. So a lot of different ways of kind of messing around with things generatively, even if you don't feel like you have like a melody in your head. Obviously, if you do and you want to play it out, great. And then the other thing to be aware of is that the reason the blue stuff is useful is because it's also a really easy way to make chords, right? Now, chords are when you stack notes on top of each other, right? Now, with this bass sound, since this is more of like a bassy sound, that might not be as effective. Let's find something else. Okay, right? Okay, so a pad is basically something kind of these big kind of airy atmospheric sounds often sound really good as chords. So okay, take all these, and again, I'm going to hit twice as long. Okay, right now, what's really useful is we can start to build chords. Now, basically, you can just put like another note there, essentially. And if it's in the blue, it should sound okay. It may start to sound a little weird if you put them right next to each other. But even if you leave one space, right, just keep adding them and see how it sounds. Why am I not getting... Oh, okay, let me pick something else that I feel like will show this little. Okay, right, so then for this one, I'll do another. Pick some random ones. Right, and then for all these notes, I'm going to select them using Shift, and I'm going to hit legato. Great. And I feel like that needs to be even longer. Let's do this whole thing now. Right, cool. And then let's create another MIDI track, right? And what's cool now is, okay, so let's get maybe like a synth lead. Okay, so put that there, right? Go, right click, insert MIDI clip. Now here's the thing, right? If I then put this in, this is now in scale mode F minor as well, then if I try and create like a little melody line over the top, it should sound somewhat coherent. So let's... It's not sounding great, but right, the point is that we can right? So yeah, there we go. That's kind of a way of stacking some of this stuff together. Now, again, and you can also like play stuff in if you want, right? So, and then the final thing for you to be aware of is if creating some of these melodies is a little intimidating, one thing that can be a really useful way to get going is an arpeggiator. So you're going to go into MIDI effects and get the arpeggiator in there. And then basically what the arpeggiator is doing is you can stack chords, right? But so if we take these chords, say, I'm going to put them here. And it's going to play through those sequentially, right? Right, and the main things you're going to want to be aware of here for the arpeggiator is you can change the rate so it can go faster. And you can change the gate, which is kind of how long it will hold it for. If you change the steps, it will kind of keep going up even more, and then style will change like the pattern. and you can hear that. Okay, and I'm just gonna do something here. Sorry. But yeah, and then go crazy with it. Start putting in your drums. So for the sake of doing everything in all MIDI, right? Remember, we can take our drum rack, and I'm gonna get a kick. And I'll get a snare. And I'll get a hat. And then again, you can also play these in with your keyboard, right? If you can't hear them though, it may be that you're in the wrong octave. So if you look in the very, very bottom left of the screen, you want your keyboard octave to be C1, right? Okay, I'm just gonna change that. Right, so we can start to play some stuff in. Drum bus here. We'll talk more about effects next week, but just to make things a bit louder. Now, you may be noticing, you might be experimenting and be like, oh, that was cool, but I forgot to record. Oh no, what did I do? So if you hit this square button up here, for MIDI, this is not for audio, it's actually always paying attention to what you did. So it may take a little finagling to figure out which part of it actually recorded, but here we go. See, I was kind of a little all over the place, but you know, we do our best. Okay, great. So, again, in terms of your assignment, right? So you're kind of building, you sort of want to build up from here. So again, I'm figuring this out for the actual, for our class, so I may slightly change the length of things. But my guess is that we were doing 8 bars of stuff. Probably ask you to do like 16 now. Right? So once you have your kind of core thing figured out, now you want to apply all of those same skills that you were using in terms of constructing stuff, right? So think about how you might sequence. Now you have a whole 16 bars to play with, right? So there's actually a lot that you can do, right? So I'll maybe have this intro. Right, and maybe I'll get my elephant sound. And I'll make it very long. Another one there. that's there too. Right, and maybe I'll get some like, I think I have this like little seagulls, so we'll get some more texture in the back there. Oh. Right, and maybe I'll get some hat. Okay, great. So I'll get just something very basic here. And maybe we'll get like a little water splash. Yeah, start putting this drop in. Right, and then I'll maybe use a little cymbal.
8. 8.
Or crash. Maybe like these drops, or maybe I can use these drops now like kind of as little fill. Yeah, something silly like that. Great. Put those in there. Maybe I'll keep this going the whole time. Right, now for the second section, right, so one thing obviously we can do is just add in, right? So remember, we're always thinking about what can we add, what can we take away, and how can we create little fills or variations, right? So I can definitely just add some more of these. Okay. That's a bit much, but we should be able to. Right, now, we also might want to think about how can we start altering this, right? So again, one easy thing to do, one way you can always create great variations without having to worry about stuff is select everything, hit shift up or down, right? And move the whole thing by an octave, right? And now. And so what I encourage you to do is kind of think about, 4 bars of intro, 4 bars of kind of main loop, 4 bars of, building that further, adding some variations. I would probably also, for an excellent 10 out of 10 assignment, want you to be thinking about, okay, what are some other instruments or things I can add, variations to keep this main section a bit more exciting, but doesn't need too much more. And then, maybe even begin to think about like a B section, right? Or some sort of like change up. Yeah. So maybe what I can do is take this and I'll put these all up. And then maybe here I'll try and do like a new, different kind of melody. It's not really working. Right, so yeah, again, you know, this is not a masterpiece by no means, but nor am I expecting what you guys to be a masterpiece. But I hope you're seeing how I'm beginning to incorporate not only the new stuff about MIDI, creating variations, but all the old stuff that we've talked about for throughout the rest of the class as well. So yeah, let's play through and listen to this kind of mid, but I think also, you know, again, don't worry too much about when you make something. Don't worry too much about like, oh, okay, how can I turn this into the most amazing thing? Just go make another one, yeah? So yeah, it's a bit of an abrupt shift here at the end. Is there anything we can do? Maybe. Yeah. Oh, okay, I didn't realize I took, wait, no, I want this to be here, and I want these chords to continue. I don't know if that's necessarily better. Maybe switching out the break, but you get the point. Mess around with it, make something that you like. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, obviously, let me know. But yeah, really, I want you to focus on getting up and running with the MIDI stuff. Don't torture yourself over having to don't feel like you need to make your own sounds. Don't feel like you need to play things in or make the most complicated melody unless you want to do that, of course. Just get up and running with it. Make it something to kind of add to your toolbox of like another thing, right? You've been working with samples. If you've at some point thought, oh, I want some, you know, I can kind of imagine what I want. I want this melody or this chord or whatever. Now you can sort of add those in, or if you wanted to play the drums in, you can do that as well. But it's really just another tool in your toolbox. So cool.